Okay, I'm going to show you the whole process to making an ocarina from the start. So what you need is 2 bowls of clay to start with, about the size of a golf ball. You're going to make 2 pinch pots out of that. Okay, and then to make these balls of clay into a pinch pot, you just take your thumb and push it into the clay and then turn and pinch. And you want it about 1/2 inch thick all the way around and also in the bottom. Okay, so about like that. I'm going to do the other one. Okay, so depending on what you want to make, so this is a circle. You can make like a little turtle, but I want to make a bird, so I'm going to pinch it in a little bit on the sides and make it more oblong, and do the same thing with my other one. And then you're going to take these 2 pinch pots and score them together. And scoring means that you are putting water on it, scratching the surface. You're making like wet clay, that's called slip, and that slip acts like glue to make the 2 pinch pots stick together. So to score, I usually just use like a plastic fork and some water. You could use a clay tool like this or a toothpick. I've even seen, like Cassie Stevens does, a toothbrush. So, but I usually have students use a plastic fork. So you just dip it in the water and then scratch the surface of the clay wherever you want it to stick together. And you should do both sides of the clay, really. Just do this enough that you're really getting some wet clay built up on the surface. So you can see how much clay I have built up there, and then I do it to the other side. And then once you have wet clay built up on that one, just take the 2 pieces and kind of push them together. Oops. And then really smooth the clay together. I like to take the back of my fingernail and smush it together. Technical art term there, smush. you can take a little bit of water and smooth that out. So if you really put them together well, you really shouldn't even see like a seam. It just looks like one piece of clay. And this is like the main body of your ocarina. If you wanted to do just like a basic ocarina, you could do just the whistle port, just basically like a rectangular prism that's attached to the body, basically like that, kind of at an angle. But it's much more fun to make it into like an animal or something. So I'm going to make mine a bird. So you'll need another chunk of clay. This time maybe about the size of a golf ball or a little bit bigger, possibly, depending on what you want to make. So I would just think about like the shapes of the animals, like head and feet and tail and all of that as you're making this. So I'm just going to make a bird. The head would basically be like a cylinder. The neck would be kind of like a rectangular prism or a cylinder. The head would be like a sphere, and the neck would be more like a cylinder. So think about those shapes as you're making it. Things together. Pretty much have the body and the head the way that I wanted. I need to do the tail feathers and some indication of feathers on the side for the wings. You can't really do the feet. The bird's feet are so small and skinny, like the clay would break. Once it dries, you have to let it get to what's called bone dry before you fire it. And when it did get to bone dry, those would just break off. So I'm just not going to do the feet of the bird. Again, you have to kind of think about the shape and the tail, like right where it attaches to the body is kind of like almost like a cone, and then kind of a flat rectangular prism comes out as the feathers. So I'm going to do that. So to get the cone shape, I want to start with a sphere, just rolling it into a ball. And then I'm going to take one side of that sphere and kind of roll it back and forth to make the cone shape. And I kind of want it to be flat on one end, so I'm just going to pinch it. That's where the tail feathers are going to be. And my plan is to put the whistle port in on the tail feathers of the bird. So you have to think about like the angle that you need. You can kind of see like on my turtle, the turtle's neck angles up, or when you turn it over, it angles up going in the opposite direction. So you put the whistle port in right there. You put the stick in and carve out this area at like a 45-degree angle, and I'll show you that when I do it on my bird. But I have to think about like I want the tail feathers to be at an angle on the underneath side so that I can do the whistle port. And it has to kind of run smoothly into the body. You don't want it to like dip in right there where the whistle port is. So. Okay, I have a pretty nice smooth transition from the tail feathers onto the bird's body on the underside where I'm going to put the whistle port. Now I have to finish the tail feathers. I need them to be a little bit thick because I got to be able to put that stick through there and not mess them up when I do that. So. Again, I'm thinking about the shape of them. They're kind of like a flat rectangular prism. So I started almost with a sphere, then I'm going back and forth to get somewhat of a cylinder, although it's already kind of flat, so that worked out pretty good. That's longer than I need. Okay, I got the shape pretty good. And I've also considered like how it needs to be for the whistle port, like having that area that kind of goes up when you turn it upside down to where the whistle port will be. and I will get more details on there. I'm going to let it dry out for a few days in a plastic bag so it just dries out a little bit. Because it's really soft right now to try to put the whistle port in. And also when I put in the whistle port in, if I put a lot of details on it now, I would just mess those up when I'm messing with it, trying to get the whistle port in. So once I get the whistle port in, then I will finish the details on the bird. But I think it turned out pretty good. So I will be back with you in a few days to put the whistle port on and put the rest of the details on. See you next time. Okay, my clay has been sitting for a week and a half in a plastic bag, like a plastic trash bag on a board that's covered in plastic. That just allows it to dry out some, but not too much. And I'm going to put the whistle port in, so I'll show you how to do that. And put some details on it. I like to put the details on it and then put the whistle port in. And then the details may have to be touched up a little bit because you mess with it quite a bit when you do the whistle port. But I don't like to do all the details after I do the whistle port because you can mess up the whistle port easily. So I like to get the details on before I do the whistle port. And I'm going to be using this small ribbon tool a lot for the whistle port and a lot of the details. So I'll start with details like the wings, the feathers. I'm just scraping off clay to make like texture in it that looks like wings and feathers. So this clay's not completely dried out. It's what's called leather hard. So it's fairly hard, kind of feels like leather, but it's not completely dried out and it's not really wet like it was when I built the ocarina. Okay, I have some pretty good texture on there for the feathers, the tail feathers, and the wings. So I'm going to go ahead and do the whistle port. A lot of times it helps to cut it in half to do the whistle port because like when you put on the head and the tail and stuff like that, the clay is solid and it really needs to be, like the whole body part of it needs to be hollow. So it helps to hollow that out by cutting it apart first. So I'm just going to take my clay knife and cut it in half. Okay, now that I have it hollowed out good, both ends of it, I'm going to put the whistle port in the tail feathers. So I'm going to take this, it's just a stir stick, like from a coffee shop, and I'm going to take it and push it into the tail feathers. Okay, and you can see it come out inside of the ocarina. This will be the part where you blow in. So when you take the stick out, it'll leave a hole that you blow in to make the whistle. And you have to make sure this is like all cleared out. There's some clay on top of the stick, so I'm getting it off. And then to make the actual whistle port, you dig into the clay. So there is the stick right there. So I'm going to dig into the clay on the opposite side of the stick here. And it needs to be like have a ramp that is at a basically like a 45-degree angle. So you dig straight into it closest to where you're going to blow the air in, and then you'll blow the air in there, and it needs to have the ramp facing this way so that when you blow the air in, it hits that ramp and it splits the air and makes the whistle. So I'm going to dig straight in right here, and then I'm going to make it come up so that it has a little ramp. And I'll show you better in a minute when I get it done. So I'm just digging in and then pulling up as I go that way to make the little ramp. I'm cleaning it up a little bit with some water and the stick. Cleaning up a little more with my other tool. Okay, now you should be able to see through it, but you can actually see clay there, so I need to carve out the clay a little bit more on the inside. Okay, now you can see there's a hole. And I need to just clean the ramp up. So there's a ramp. It actually goes up at about a 45-degree angle right here. So I'm just going to put a little bit of water on my stick and kind of clean it up a little bit, make it nice and sharp and smooth. Okay, then I have to make sure the stick points directly to that ramp, because right now it's a little bit below it. So I have to bend the clay a little bit so that the stick is pointing right to the ramp. So you can see it's pointing right at the ramp. Hopefully you can see that. Okay, then I can test it and see if it works. So it works a little bit. It's a little bit weak. I'm going to try to fix it up a little and make it a stronger sound. Oh yeah, that's really good. Okay, so I can score it back together, put the finger holes in it, and I'm done. So scoring just means that you take like a fork or something to scratch it with. You could use this tool, but I think the fork is just a little more efficient because it has a lot more prongs. Dip it in the water, scratch the clay until you build up wet clay. And that wet clay acts like glue. You do this to both sides of the clay and then push it together. I got a lot of wet clay build up. I have to do that the other side and I can put it back together. Okay, I'm just gotta smooth it back together too. Sometimes put little pieces of clay in there so it doesn't show like a crease. And also make it hold together better if you do that too. Okay, make sure my whistle port still works. Pretty good. I'm going to put my finger holes on the right side since I'm right-handed when I'm facing the whistle port. I'm looking at my other ocarina to see if the smallest hole is nearest the whistle port, and then it gets bigger as it goes away from it. It doesn't have to be that way, but I have a guide that tells me how to make an octave if it is that way. So I'm just poking a hole in it with my clay tool here for the smallest hole. And wiggle it around to make it a little bit bigger. And my next hole, I'm actually using part of an ink pen to poke in it. Okay, in the biggest hole, I use this clay tool. And we have 3 different size holes, and you're supposed to be able to make an octave if you have 3 holes and putting your fingers in different positions for like each note. So we'll see how it works. Oh yeah, it works really good. So I'll have to let this dry out for a few days and then I can fire it in the kiln. And then after it's fired, I can paint it like I want to paint it like a Eastern bluebird. So enjoy your art making.